One of the most misunderstood dynamics in dating is what happens when you finally stop giving, when you stop chasing, stop texting, stop trying to keep the connection alive. Because in that silence, something shifts. And it always does when you're consistently there, emotionally available, checking in, initiating conversations, being supportive. You're pouring energy into a dynamic that might not even be reciprocated. You're doing it because you care, because you believe in the potential of the connection, and because maybe deep down you think your consistency will win them over, that your loyalty will be enough to get them to choose you. But here's what we miss in that moment. Every time you show up without them matching your effort, you're giving them a sense of security that they haven't earned. They start to think, she's always going to be there. I can take space. I can take time. I can take her for granted, and she'll still be around when I come back. And that's exactly what they count on. But the second you stop, genuinely stop, everything changes. When the messages don't come, when you stop reacting to their stories, stop liking their photos, stop asking how they're doing, and just pull your energy back, they notice. Even if they don't say anything immediately, even if it takes days or weeks, they notice that silence. And here's the part they never expect. The comfort of your consistency disappearing feels jarring, because up until now, they had certainty. They knew you cared. They knew they could reach out whenever they wanted. But now, that security is gone. That steady stream of affection, attention, reassurance, it's vanished. And in that moment, they feel the very thing they never expected to feel from you. Distance. Not the kind of distance that's manipulative, not the cold shoulder, not a game, but a real, authentic pulling away. Because you're no longer willing to be the only one holding the relationship up. You're no longer going to offer everything while getting breadcrumbs in return. And that kind of shift, that's powerful. What happens next is fascinating. They start to question everything. Why isn't she texting me? Has she met someone else? Is she over me? Those questions don't come from the heart at first. They come from the ego. Because your absence isn't just about missing your presence. It's about their expectation being broken. See, when you were showing up consistently, you were emotionally feeding the connection. You were the one keeping it alive. They didn't have to do the work. You were doing it for both of you. But now that you've stopped, now that there's silence, they feel something they never had to feel before, the weight of their own inaction. Suddenly it's on them to reach out. It's on them to think about you, to miss you, to make a move. And because they're not used to that dynamic, because the silence is foreign, because in that quiet, they finally have to confront the truth. They were never in control of your feelings. You were just choosing to give. And now you've stopped choosing. That silence becomes a mirror that reflects their neglect, their hesitation, their lack of effort. And while that might sting for them, it's clarity for you. Because when you stop showing up for someone who's not showing up for you, you finally get to see what's real. Do they step up or do they stay gone? The irony? That's often when they come back, not when you're clinging, not when you're waiting by the phone, not when you're posting stories hoping they'll see. They come back when your world has gotten quieter and more peaceful, when you've reclaimed your power, when you're no longer investing in potential, you're investing in your reality. That's when they start to feel the void, not just of your messages, but of your energy. Because it's not about a text or a phone call. It's about the feeling of someone being in your corner, believing in them, rooting for them, And when you stop doing that, they realize what they lost. But here's the part no one tells you. By the time they feel it, you've already started healing. You've already started recentering. You've already remembered who you are and how valuable your love truly is. And when they come back, they're not coming back to the same version of you they left. They're coming back to someone stronger, clearer, and far less available for half-hearted effort. So don't fear the silence. Don't fear pulling back, because in that stillness, you gain your strength. And that strength, it changes everything. They feel it when you stop showing up. Every time, always. When you're constantly available to someone, especially someone who hasn't shown the same level of commitment or clarity, you become part of the background noise in their life. You're there, you're expected, you're answering messages, liking posts, checking in. And because you're so consistent, so present, they stop feeling the weight of your presence. They stop noticing it. It's like a song on repeat. You love it at first, but eventually you forget it's even playing. That's what happens when you're too available. But the moment you stop, when you pull your energy back, that's when the silence becomes louder than the sound ever was. People think that pulling away is about playing games. It's not. It's about reclaiming your energy. It's about saying, I'm not going to invest in someone who's not actively investing in me. And when you do that, something very interesting happens. You create curiosity. When someone who's used to getting your attention suddenly doesn't, they start to ask questions, not always out loud, but internally. Did I do something wrong? Is she seeing someone else? Has she moved on? That curiosity begins to eat at them. Slowly at first, and then more aggressively as time goes on. You have to understand, we are wired to value mystery. It's not about being elusive for the sake of it. It's about not giving all of yourself to someone who hasn't earned the right to have full access. When you're constantly there, you're giving that access away for free. But the moment you pull back, you become unpredictable. You become someone he no longer has a complete read on. And that unpredictability creates interest. It re-engages his mind. Now, he's not just thinking about you when he's bored. You're popping into his head in moments he doesn't expect. When he's out with friends, when he sees a post that reminds him of you, when he realizes you haven't watched his story in days, that's when he starts to feel something shift. The pattern is broken. The dynamic has changed. And in that break, in that space you've created, he starts to realize what you meant, or worse for him, what he might be losing. Here's the thing no one tells you. Most men don't think about what they want from a woman when they have her. They start to reflect when she becomes less accessible, because now they're not getting validation on demand. They're not sure if you're still interested. That uncertainty creates desire. It creates urgency. It's no longer a guarantee. You're no longer a guarantee, and that changes everything. You see, your attention is valuable, but most of us are giving it away like it's unlimited, like it doesn't cost us emotionally. It does. Every time you reach out when he hasn't reached in, every time you respond instantly to someone who treats you like an afterthought, you're training them to see your energy as disposable. But when you take that energy back and invest it in yourself, your goals, your friendships, your growth, you shift the focus. Now, you're not chasing, you're attracting. And the beauty is you're not doing any of this to make him chase you. That's the difference. You're not waiting around for him to notice. You're moving forward because your life deserves that momentum. He just happens to notice as a byproduct. Because your absence becomes information. It speaks volumes. It says, I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to prove my worth. I've already decided it. And when you show someone that level of self-respect, The right people start to lean in. The wrong ones fade out. He may not have realized what he had when he had it, but he will start to notice when you're not the one constantly reaching out, initiating plans, holding the connection together. He'll notice when he opens his phone and there's no message from you. He'll notice when the person who always made him feel important suddenly isn't offering that emotional safety net. He'll notice when you stop filling in the blanks of his inconsistent behavior. And in that noticing, he starts to panic. Just a little at first, then a bit more. He may reach out. He may try to test the waters. He might even try to act like nothing happened, as if he didn't take your attention for granted. But now you know. Now you understand the power of your presence. And more importantly, you understand the impact of your absence. You're no longer emotionally auditioning for someone who couldn't even commit to the role. You're not waiting for crumbs. You've raised this standard. And now, if he wants access again, he has to show up differently. Let him wonder. Let the silence speak. You know what's fascinating? Before a guy even realizes he misses you emotionally, before his heart has the courage to admit that there's a space only you could fill, his ego is the first thing that takes the hit. And I want you to really understand how this plays out because it's subtle. It's not about love just yet. It's about identity. For a while, he's gotten used to a version of you that's always been there. Maybe you were the one initiating the conversation, checking in, showing care. Maybe even after things went cold, you still liked his photos, watched his stories, responded to his texts. Even if they were late, dry, or inconsistent, he knew on some level that you hadn't really let go. And as long as that safety net existed, his ego was perfectly comfortable. You see, his world still included the quiet confidence that you'd come back. That if things didn't work out elsewhere, you were still emotionally available. That no matter how long it had been, he could reach out and you'd reply. Even if he didn't say much. Even if he didn't offer commitment. Your attention, your kindness, your energy, your time, they were still accessible to him. But then something changed. Maybe it was subtle at first. You didn't respond to that last text right away. You stopped watching his stories. You didn't reach out on his birthday. And then he starts wondering, wait, where did she go? That's not his heart missing you yet. That's his ego waking up in shock. Because for the first time, he's no longer certain of you. That safety net, gone. And what's left is a void that he never planned for. It's disorienting for him. He was so sure of your presence, so sure that you were still emotionally anchored to him, even if he wasn't offering anything concrete. Now that certainty is gone. And it messes with his sense of control. And for many men, especially the ones who took you for granted, this is the moment where the inner alarm goes off. Not because he's ready to love you right, not because he's suddenly matured overnight, but because the dynamic shifted. You stopped playing the role he assigned to you, and now he doesn't know where you stand. Let me be clear. This isn't when he starts thinking deeply about how much you meant to him. That might come later. Right now, this is about disruption. His image of you, the one he kept safely tucked away while he explored other options, no longer fits the reality. And that's where the discomfort kicks in. Now he's tempted to reach out, not necessarily with depth, not necessarily with honesty. Sometimes it's just a quick, hey, how have you been? Or I saw this and thought of you. It's light, harmless looking, but it's a temperature check. He's trying to see if you're still there, if he still has the access he once did. If your heart is still in his hands, even a little, and this is the part where so many women get drawn back in, because that little message, it feels like a breadcrumb of hope. You start wondering, has he changed? Is this the moment he finally realizes? But often it's not. It's just his ego checking if it can still feel important to you, if it still holds space in your life without offering anything in return. This is why boundaries are so powerful. When you don't respond the way you used to, when you protect your peace, when you resist the urge to validate his ego, you're not being cold, you're being clear. You're sending a message. You no longer get to rent space in my heart without earning it. And that message is uncomfortable for him, because now he has to question everything he took for granted. Your love is no longer a given. Your attention isn't free. And if he wants to come back, he's going to have to face the discomfort of not being in control anymore. He has to face the possibility that you've actually grown past needing him. That's when the real test begins. Not for him, for you. Because this is where you reclaim your power. Not by ignoring him to manipulate an outcome, but by honoring your own worth, regardless of what he does next. This is where you stop making decisions based on whether he might come back and start making decisions based on whether he deserves to. And you know what often happens next? He starts to spiral, because now it's not just ego. Now he's starting to feel. Now, with time and silence and the absence of your warmth, his heart begins to catch up. He starts remembering the way you made him feel. Not the validation, not the comfort, you, your energy, your laughter, your support, all the things he can't replace. But by the time that happens, you're no longer waiting for it, because you've already risen above the version of yourself that needed his attention to feel whole. You've built a version of you that's grounded, self-respecting, and emotionally free. And that is when he realizes he didn't just lose someone who cared, he lost someone who won't care the same way ever again. Before he comes back to you, before he even sends that, "Hey, been thinking about you" text, something always happens, and it's almost predictable. He starts rewriting the story. At first, it's not obvious to him. He goes about his days, scrolling through socials, talking to new people, filling his time. But over time, there's this quiet space in the background that starts to grow louder. He starts remembering, but not just any memories. He starts selectively recalling the highlights, the good moments, the little inside jokes that only the two of you shared. That Sunday you stayed in bed until noon just talking. That random Wednesday when you showed up with his favorite coffee for no reason. That look you gave him when he was talking and you made him feel like the most understood man in the world. Those moments are suddenly front and center. And this is the part that no one tells you. He's not remembering the fights, the tension, the things that drove the wedge. No, he's not even seeing those right now. Because the version of you that's living in his head is the one that used to be there, loving, open, emotionally available. And now that you've pulled away, that image becomes romanticized. Not necessarily real, but powerful. That's how nostalgia works. We don't look back at things exactly how they were. We look back through the lens of how we want them to be. So now, in his head, you're the one who got away. The softness, the laughter, the energy you brought, he begins to elevate it. The more time that passes, the more idealized you become. And here's the thing. He may not even realize doing it. This process, it's subconscious at first. He just starts missing you without knowing why. The story in his head starts to shift from "we didn't work out" to maybe I gave up too soon. And now, instead of replaying the reasons he let go, he's starting to remember the reasons he held on as long as he did. The comfort, the connection, the way you made him feel seen. And once that narrative shifts internally, he starts to feel regret, not necessarily because of what happened, but because of what he thinks could still happen. But here's the part you need to hear. This revision of the story has very little to do with reality. It's not about who you are now, it's about who you were then. And if you're doing the work on yourself, healing, growing, building your boundaries, then the person he's missing isn't even you anymore. He's falling in love with a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. He's attached to a memory, not the woman you've become. This is why when he comes back, and he often will, you have to remember the growth you've done in his absence. Because that romanticized version of the relationship in his head, that's his comfort zone. That's his safety net. Doesn't mean he's ready for a different relationship. It just means he misses what was easy, what felt good, what made him feel wanted. When he starts rewriting the story, he also starts believing it. That's why he might show up again acting like the past didn't matter as much, brushing it off, suggesting something casual like catching up over coffee just to feel you out. But underneath that calm tone is a deep hope that you might still be the same woman who loved him before. And that's your moment, that's your mirror, because if you are the same, if you haven't done the work, if you've been waiting, quietly hoping for this moment, then it's easy to fall back into the old story with him. But if you've grown, if you've learnt to love yourself more than you miss him, then you'll be able to see the fantasy for what it is. That's when your power becomes undeniable. Not because you rejected him, not because you made him feel small, but because you didn't need to be chosen by someone who once left. You chose yourself first. And now the version of you that stands before him is no longer waiting to be remembered. She's writing a whole new story. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't slamming the door shut. It's simply realizing that the version of you he wants back no longer lives here. She evolved. You're not crying over texts anymore. You're not sitting there staring at your phone, waiting for a message that never comes. You're not obsessively checking his stories, trying to decode every emoji or wondering who that girl in the background is. Something shifted. And that shift didn't happen because he changed. It happened because you did. You woke up one day and realized the energy you were pouring into someone who wasn't showing up for you could be better spent elsewhere. Not necessarily on someone else, but on yourself, on your peace, on your progress, on your power. You stopped letting his lack of attention define your worth. You stopped handing over the steering wheel of your self-esteem to someone who didn't know where he was going. And in that space, something beautiful started to happen. You started to glow again. Not in the new makeup, new dress kind of way, although maybe that too, but deeper, from the inside. There's a different energy in someone who's finally prioritizing themselves, a softness in the way they no longer over-explain, a calm in how they stop rushing towards someone who's standing still, a confidence in their ability to say, if you're not showing up right, then maybe you don't belong in this chapter. He sees that. Trust me, even if he doesn't reach out yet, he sees it. Maybe through social media, maybe through mutual friends, maybe just energetically. People can feel when you've stopped orbiting them. And now he's confused Because the version of you he remembers was always available, always the first to respond, always ready to give a second chance, always hoping he'd be better this time. That version of you was predictable, safe, and if we're honest, he probably took her for granted. Because people do that with things they assume will always be there. But this version of you, the one who's glowing up quietly, the one who's not reacting, not chasing, not even checking in, that version makes him uncomfortable in all the right ways. Because now he has to wonder, has she moved on? Is she seeing someone else? Did I really lose her? And this is where everything starts to turn. Not because you're playing games, not because you're trying to manipulate the outcome, but because you're finally living for you. Your silence is no longer passive. It's powerful. It says more than any "we need to talk" ever could. It tells him, you don't have access to me anymore. Not at the same level, not with the same behavior. What's happening here is that you're no longer emotionally available to the version of him that disappointed you. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're just done showing up for someone who couldn't recognize your value the first time around. That glow up isn't about looking better. It's about knowing better. And don't think for a second he doesn't feel that. He might reach out subtly at first, a random meme, a "hey, saw this and thought of you," something low effort, because he wants to test the waters without risking too much. But you're different now. You're not biting at breadcrumbs. You're not looking for meaning in mixed signals. You've upgraded your taste in energy. You now require clarity, consistency, and care. Anything less doesn't get past your door. He'll try to figure out what changed. And the answer is simple. You did. You got tired of negotiating for love. You got tired of explaining how you deserve to be treated. You finally understood that waiting around for someone to pick you is a form of self-abandonment. And you chose you fully, without needing anyone else to validate that choice. And now he has to deal with a version of you that understands her worth. That's what really messes with him. Not that you've moved on physically, but that you've evolved emotionally. That you're not waiting for closure. That you're not looking for an apology to heal. That you've become the kind of woman who knows her peace is too precious to be placed in someone else's hands. And that's when he starts to feel the weight of his absence. Because now the space you left behind feels heavy. Now the attention he used to take for granted is nowhere to be found. And now, for the first time, he has to earn his way back into a place he used to walk into freely. But by the time he gets that clarity, it's often too late. Because when you've genuinely grown, it's not about proving a point or getting someone back. It's about protecting the person you've become. And that woman doesn't go backward. She doesn't shrink to be understood. She doesn't dim to be liked. She doesn't chase anyone who had the audacity to walk away when all she offered was loyalty, softness, and love. She's not playing hard to get. She's just hard to forget. He comes back when you've moved on emotionally. That's the moment. It's never when you're waiting by the phone, checking his last scene, hoping he misses you. It's not when you're replaying every conversation or stalking his social media to look for signs. No, it's when you've let go, when your peace is no longer connected to whether or not he texts you. That's when it happens. See, there's something strange that always seems to happen at the end of emotional attachments. You go through all the stages: denial, bargaining, sadness, that quiet desperation where you think maybe, just maybe, if you give him enough time, he'll come around. But time alone does. Growth does. And growth only happens when you finally get tired of putting your life on pause for someone who hit mute on you a long time ago. You begin to rediscover yourself. Not the you who waited, not the you who begged for crumbs of connection, but the you who was always underneath, the confident, grounded, valuable woman who just forgot her worth for a little while. And when that shift happens, everything starts to change. You laugh a little easier. Your attention isn't on him, it's on your future, on your friends, your health, your goals. You're not performing indifference. You're genuinely not thinking about him the way you used to. And that's the turning point. Because now he feels it, maybe not consciously at first, but something changes. The energy shifts. The dynamic that once made him feel chased, admired, needed, it's gone. And the moment he realizes he no longer has a permanent space in your heart, that's the moment he starts to feel something strange. Loss. Not of the relationship as it was, but of the power he once had. He comes back, not because he's suddenly had a divine epiphany about how amazing you are. He always knew that. But back then, he thought your value would always be accessible. He thought he could take you for granted and you'd still be there. When that assumption dies, he wakes up. The silence becomes loud. The photos, the places, the little things you used to say, they echo differently now because they're not followed by a message from you. You've stopped chasing, so now he starts wondering if he should. But here's the real kicker. By the time he comes back, you've evolved. You're no longer the same person he walked away from. You don't look at him through the same lens anymore. You're not hoping for validation. You're not trying to prove your worth. You already know it. So when he reaches out, when he sends that message or tries to spark a conversation, it doesn't hit you the way it used to. You don't get butterfly. You don't feel that rush of hope. Instead, you feel grounded, clear, in control, because now you get to decide, not from a place of desperation or fantasy, but from truth, from strength, from having been through the pain and using it to build something better, something unshakable inside you. You're no longer looking for someone to complete you. You've done it. Tried that work yourself. And when he comes back, the old story doesn't fit your new reality. It's wild how the universe works sometimes. Just when you stop needing someone, they show up. But that's not the universe being cruel. It's showing you how far you've come. It's giving you a choice. And that's the moment where you get to ask, do I want to go back to something that broke me? Or do I want to keep building the life that healed me? Because if he only saw your value after he lost you, he didn't value you, he valued your absence. And there's a big difference. Real love doesn't just come back, it shows up differently. It's consistent, it's clear, it's respectful. And it's not just about missing you, it's about choosing you. Every day, without the drama, without the waiting, without you having to lose yourself to be seen. So if he comes back, don't ask whether you still love him. Ask whether you still love you when you're with him. That answer will tell you everything you need to know. He always comes back, but by then you won't need him to.